There you go, everybody, friends and family. Let's get right into it. I know it's Easter, so I want to just say Happy Easter. He is risen. And if you're looking for an Easter message today or Sunday school class, I'm not doing that. Go to your minister or your pastor and go to church, and they'll give you that. We're going on Revelations chapter 6, and we'll start at 2, where we left off. Okay? And behold, a white horse. And we're talking about this guy on the white horse. A lot of people, in the 1930s and stuff, used to believe that this was Christ because he's riding a white horse, and the only one that rides a white horse is Jesus Christ. But that's not the fact. We'll find out that's not true. Okay, he is the Antichrist, or the devil. Okay, and remember, the devil is a master counterfeiter. Okay, so he's counterfeiting Jesus riding as Jesus Christ or the Messiah. Okay, trying to make himself out to be that person. And I learned just a little while ago that when you become a treasury employee, your first 9 to 12 months of being a treasury employee, okay, all you do is look and study real bills. Okay, with magnifying glasses and everything, you look over constantly just the real thing. Real dollar bills, real $20 bills, real $50 bills, real $100 bills. That's all you look at. Okay? The reason they do that is after a year, you know the real stuff's so good that when you get a counterfeit, you know right away. You see it right away that that's counterfeit. Okay? That's exactly what I'm going to do right now with you after seeing that he's on the white horse. The best place I can take it to realize that is let's go to Revelation chapter 19. Okay? This is the real Christ coming back. Revelation 19, verses 11 and 12 first. Okay? And it says, and I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse. Here he is on a white horse. And he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True. And in righteousness he does judge and make war. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. And he had a name written no man knew but himself. He was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. Well, we know the Word of God. You get that from John 1:1. Okay, and the Word of God is capitalized. So this is Christ incarnate, okay? And he's coming back on the white horse. And let's get to 14 too. I'll get to that in just a minute. Name only himself. It says dipped in blood. 13. I used to think that was his blood showing his death, burial, and resurrection. But as we actually get to study 19 here, I'll show you that that's not true. Okay, it's the blood of his victims, okay, those that he comes down to, because he comes with wrath and vexation, okay, to conquer and destroy all the nations. Okay, so the blood in his vesture is actually the blood of those he's come to conquer and destroy. He's going to set up his kingdom and he's going to destroy everyone else. Anyone that survives and goes into the kingdom with Jesus Christ when he sets up his kingdom will be only those that have been worthy to go. Okay? All right. And if we go back to, before we go back to Revelations chapter 2, let's stop off at Matthew 25:31. So go into Matthew 25:31. And I'll get to Matthew 25. We're going to eventually go, as you see, to Matthew 24, because Matthew 24 is a parallel chapter to Revelation 6, and I'll show you why. But first, we're going to go to Matthew 25:31. Get down to 31, it's way down here. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. As you notice here, he says just all his angels. Okay, he doesn't mention us. Okay? Because in in Revelation 19:14, it talks about all of us in white linen. Let's go back there real quick because I think I forgot to even say that. So let's go back quick to Revelations.
But the us is
19.
Those that were raptured in the We're taken up in
Revelation
the rapture.
19:14. If we read that verse, it says, "And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean." That's not angels. Okay? Angels don't wear white linen. Okay? It's white and clean. Okay? Fine linen. They don't wear that. Okay? Angels wear armor. They're the warriors of God, the army of God.
What is that Revelation 1?
Revelation 19, verse 14. Says, "The armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses."
Yeah.
This is the one that my Aunt Hilda used to always say she was scared to death of horses. So she used to always say, do I have to actually ride one? She said, "No, I'll stay and clean the stables and stuff." It didn't want to be on those horses. Okay. But whenever you find something clothed in fine linen, right, you'll realize they'll make it known that it's the saints. It's us. Christ is telling them here in Revelations that we're coming back with them. Okay. But when we go to Matthew, like we did there at 25, what's he say? Matthew 25, he says, 31. He says, "When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory." You don't mention us at all. How come? Well, because to mention us, the saints, okay, in Matthew 25:31, he would be giving away the church age. They would ask him, "Who are those people?" And he's not supposed to do that. It's a mystery. It's a secret.
He doesn't know.
He's not, as a man, he would say he didn't know, but he was God. He knew.
No, I mean in Matthew.
Well, yes, but he's telling them what Christ said, honey.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yes, Christ said this. So he's not going to tell them that. They ask, "Who are those?" "Well, they're the Gentiles I'm going to have to take 2,000 years about." No. Okay. So he doesn't give it away. But in Revelations, that John's writing, he does tell them. Why? Because it's the end. It's coming. That's what's going to happen. The Gentiles are going to come in. He rarely ever mentions us at all. And you won't find any mention of the Gentile church in any of the Old Testament. Like we said on our timeline, they saw the law coming right up, and right to the tribulation was to begin immediately. The minute Christ went up to heaven, tribulation should have started. Okay? Even John telling it in this little part here we see, okay? I'm sorry, we'll go to John 10, 11, and 18. But first, even they say it, they think it's right around the corner. It's coming. Let's turn to John real quick and see that. John chapter 10, 11, 15. Now, I'm bringing this up not because he told it, he didn't. Okay. This is the only place I know. Like I said, the Old Testament has nothing to do, doesn't mention it at all. They think they were going to go right into it, and that was the end of it. Okay. But God stopped it, moved them forward, and we're brought in the age of grace for Gentiles. Okay. And there's no mention of us at all in the Old Testament or in anywhere else you can find the Bible, except here in John. I find him just making a hint of us. And the reason I believe he's doing it is because they're asking him, what will be the end time? Okay. And Christ is telling them. Okay. So we'll begin at verse 11. He says, "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep." He's not going to be talking about his death, burial, and resurrection. And I think that's the only reason he mentions it, because that's our gospel. They wouldn't have anything that they would barely talk about it, but our whole faith is based on it. Okay. But then he goes into, "But he that is a hireling and not the shepherd," and he goes in about, he would run off the first time a wolf would come, and he'd leave the sheep to be, torn apart. He says, 13 says, "The hireling fleeth because he's an hireling and careth not for the sheep. I am the good shepherd," verse 14, "and know my sheep, and am known of mine." In other words, we know him. Right? "As the Father knoweth me, even so know I the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep." Okay? And then he goes on to say, and other sheep I have, okay, which are not of this fold. He's talking to Jews. What are the sheep does he have that are not of this fold? Us as Gentiles. Okay? So he's making mention of it. Okay? Them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. Therefore doth my Father love me, because I lay down my life that I may take it again. No man taketh it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. The command have I received of my Father. Commandment. Oh, the commandment, yeah, I have received of my Father. As you notice, as we said earlier, last lesson, all the Jewish nation was blinded to that Christ is their Messiah. They still are. The apostles were only until he actually did it. And then all those verses came back to them and they realized, oh my gosh, he told us this was going to happen. Okay? I think he put this in there because, yeah, they weren't going to see it or understand that he was going to die and be raised again at all anyway. They were blinded. Okay? But he left that little footnote for us that lets us know he thought of us before it ever began. Okay? Before he ever came, this was made for us. This little gap of over almost 2,000 years now was put in there for us. Okay? And actually, I said in Revelations 19:14, we're included in the army. Matthew 23:3, he doesn't give away the secret. Okay? He leaves it just the angels coming back. And of course, John 10:11 and 18 lets us know that he isn't leaving us out because he wants to. He's leaving us out because he's letting the mystery stay known correctly. And if we keep reading, we'll go back. Let's quickly go back to Revelations. Let's go back to our Revelations. I don't want to do that. I want to do this right here. Get out of John. Come back down here to Revelations 6. And verse 2. And a strong angel proclaiming in a loud voice, who is worthy? Oh, no, it's 5. No wonder it doesn't look right. It's like, wait a minute, that ain't what I want. I want 6. And I saw and behold the white horse, and he that sat upon him had a bow. That bow, I looked it up because a lot of commentators and commentaries about Revelations say that's kind of a hard word to figure out because bow can mean so many things, especially in English, and also in the Greek it doesn't. And I thought, I better get my strong concordance out and look it up. When I look it up, it ain't hard at all. It's only used one time in the whole Bible. The word they're translating as bow here is used just one time in the whole Bible. Okay? And in the Greek, it specifies a bow that's always with arrows. So it is a bow and arrow.
What is this in Revelation?
Revelation 6, chapter 2. The man that sat on the right horse, okay? And then it says he had a bow. B-O-W.
Only got the 2.
It's always the bow with the
Arrows.
Arrows, okay? But it's more important than even that. This bow is it's like the long bow, and it's perfectly made. It's precise. It always goes with arrows because it's the best. Only the best archers get a bow like this. Okay? Why? Because if it was Robin Hood, that's the bow we'd have. If it was William Tell, that's the bow we'd have. Okay? Because he is the best archer you can possibly have. You give him the best equipment so that he can do the most damage to your enemy. That's that bow. So just him wearing it, and people look at it, they realize, want to make sure he doesn't pull an arrow. Okay? And it tells us he don't even have arrows. He just has the bow. But just showing it lets everyone know the danger they could be in to cross him. Okay? And it says, and a crown was given unto him. Okay? I love that because remember, when we just read in 19, Revelation 19, Christ has many crowns. He's got one, and it's given unto him. Who gives him the crown? We do. When he comes and stops all the fighting and sets everything up, what are we going to say? He's our leader. He's our Messiah. The Jews are going to say he's the Messiah. Yeah, we give him the crown. We lay down our stuff and let him in it. And the last one says, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. He meaning, in other words, taking control. But we're giving it to him. There's no war going on here. He's not fighting anyone. He's conquering them, all with his mouth and his flattery and showing the power he can possess, okay, by carrying that bow, whatever it is, it proves that he's got much power behind him. Okay, but we let him. We give him the crown. Okay. Um. Let's let's take that down to Matthew 24 now. Okay. If we go back up to Matthew, we already did 25, but let's go to Matthew 24, chapter 24. We're going to go back and forth from this chapter a lot as we keep going through this chapter chapter 6, because Matthew chapter 24 and Revelation like parallel chapters to each other. Okay, though you'll see a lot of things going on exactly the same thing. Okay? Why? Because Matthew 24 is the apostles asking Christ, well, what is the sign for the end time? What are we looking for? Remember, 1 Corinthians, was it 1:22? Okay, says that the Jews always seek a sign. Okay? Why? Because the prophets in the old always gave them a sign to know that this is happening, or this will come to pass, or this will be what's going to happen. So they asked Christ, what's the sign? And Christ tells them. And Jesus went out, departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Now Jesus is looking ahead to 70 AD. As you notice, I got 70 AD there, and that's when the law stops. Okay? When tribulation starts, we'll be under the law again, because it's a Jewish thing, and they're under the law. But it stops in 70 AD. Okay? You can't have any more, the Jews can't have any more because the Romans come in 70 AD. Okay? And General Titus, who ends up becoming emperor, his father was emperor at the time, they come in and they destroy Jerusalem. Okay, they lay siege to it, and it takes almost a year, and they finally get in through the gates and destroy Jerusalem. They tear down that temple. Now, the first temple, that David's temple, was built with cedar. It was wood, but they painted it in gold, but it was wood from Lebanon. Okay? Well, they could burn that, because you get it hot enough, gold will start to run, and they burned it down and burnt most of the city down, the walls down, the gates down. They were all wood. Okay? Well, the second temple they built, they didn't build it with wood. They built it with brick. Okay, the same kind of brick they made in Egypt with straw. They built it with brick, and they painted those bricks in gold. So this building shined. It was golden. When the Romans came in and destroyed it in 70 AD, just like Jesus said, they took it apart brick by brick and scraped the gold off of the bricks and threw them aside, so that not one brick stand upon another. They totally destroyed it by taking all the gold. As a footnote, I told you this last week, I think too, that in 70 AD they began the construction of the Colosseum. Rome did. Where'd they get all the money to pay for the construction of the Colosseum? Jerusalem. They took it from the gold of the temple, and then all the golden artifacts within the temple, the golden candlesticks, the golden all that is all listed by Romans as loot or whatever taken from Israel. The Romans, for one thing, they were great bookkeepers. That's how we know that Christ is a true thing, that Christ is a true man. Why? It's written in the histories of Rome. They tell you about it. We know he was crucified. We know that they say that people saw him alive afterwards. All that is historical fact. Rome wrote it down. Okay? So they destroyed Jerusalem and destroyed that temple, just as Jesus tells his men here. And if we keep going on, let's go down to 6. And we hear he said, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. That's Matthew 1 and 2. And Matthew 3, as I just said, Mount of Olives disciple, 24:3. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. At 24:3, it says, and they sat upon the Mount of Olives. The disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming? See, 1 Corinthians, I told you before, 122. They're asking what sign and everything. Okay? And what will be the end of the world, and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered to them, take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear wars and rumors of wars, and we all went through that. Okay? And the great thing about that is, what I think is really fascinating about that is, um, Christ begins, Christ begins to lay out, after that, Christ begins to lay out the events of the 7 years, that they're going to have wars and rumors of wars. And Jesus said, and take heed that no man deceive you, because it's all going to come to pass sooner or later. Let's go to 1 John 2:18. Let's take you there real quick, because this is the same man that wrote Revelations. And 1 John chapter 2, verse 18. I like this because John says, he's talking about end times. Little children, it is the last time. And as ye have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now are there many Antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time. Even John thinks it's right around the corner. It's got to be the last time, because there's many Antichrists within, okay? So even John, who was given Revelations, okay, later in life, he writes Revelations. Here, at 1 John, even he thinks it's here. Remember I told you last week, we talked about those churches. They had to be told, no, it's not. The last time isn't here yet. Okay? In 2 Thessalonians, he had to tell them, because in 1 Thessalonians, they talked about it, but in 2 Thessalonians, he had to tell them, I don't want you ignorant. It's not here yet. Okay? It's not going to be here yet. It isn't anywhere near as bad as it's going to be. And that's what John is thinking. Oh, yes, here it is. No, it's not. Let's go back to Revelations. And I want to go back, yes. Let's go back to our Revelations. I'm going to go back down here. Here we are. There. It's just right here. 6. And 6, 2 and 3. And they saw the white horse and the bow, and crown was given unto him, and he went forth confidently. He said, and when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, come and see. Okay? And there went out another horse that was red. Remember, these seals now are the seals to the mortgage of the earth, and all of them have to be opened. Everything has to be done within that scroll in order for God to buy back, okay, the corrupted world, in order to get rid of the corruption, the sin. Okay, it all has to become the power. So all of these seals are going to be opened. The 7 trumpets, we're going to end up seeing it all. But in verse 4, we see a red horse, and a lot of scholars and everything used to say that they believe that was Russia, okay, because the Russian Red Army, and red always is a symbol of Russia. Okay, I believe that too when they said that. But nowadays, I see China, and they're the big red threat. So I'm not sure, but if we keep reading, we'll find they are talking about a certain area. So if we keep reading, we'll find it out. Okay. It says, red horse, and power was given to him that sat upon to take peace from the earth. Well, if you don't have peace, what do you have?
War.
You have war. Okay? Exactly. You have war. So he's not going to make war with somebody, any of them, this red horse, but he's going to cause others to war against one another. And that's what's going to happen. Just like Matthew said, you'll have wars and rumors of wars. It's going to be all over the place. Isn't it funny? God always likes to set up a foreknowledge, something we see that we can see kind of foreknowledge is what's actually going to happen in the end. Okay? And isn't it funny that our president came into office with 8 wars going on throughout the world? 8 of them were going on. Okay? 6 of those 8 were Muslims attacking their neighbors. I don't want to say anything bad about Muslims, but that's what normally happens. Okay? And within the first year, stopped 7 of them. He got 7 of them to stop fighting. Mostly he got them to stop fighting because he used the strength of the United States instead of the weakness. And everyone wants to trade with the United States. Why? They want the goods to come to America because we are the big spenders here. We buy more. America buys more goods in the world than anyone else basically more than the top 3 combined. We love to buy our stuff. And when Trump said, you either stop or I'm going to tear up your goods 100%, and you won't get any sales in America anymore. That made them all go, what? Nobody wanted to. The goods stopped. It's raised so high that Americans wouldn't buy them. So he talked them into it, made them stop. It's really funny too that he mentioned the war that was going to be the easiest was going to be the Ukraine and Russian war. Right? No, it wasn't. It's not the easiest because both of them, they have their own agendas. Russia wants Ukraine, and of course, the president of Ukraine, Vladimir, Zelensky, yeah, he wants all of Crimea and his country back. So neither one of them are going to stop till they have to because it's the end. But they fought such a great, strategic war, and it's changed basically Ukraine has changed what's the word I'm looking for? Changed the landscape of war. By the end of the Second World War, most of the powers, it was mechanized armor divisions win the war. Tanks and armored vehicles and things of that nature. Okay? And missile launchers and things of that nature. Okay? No, they don't. Ukraine has proven that just with some really good, what do you call them, the drone pilots, okay, and connection to those drones that can keep a connection so the drone will do what you want, okay, or if it gets bad and they're jamming your signal, okay, you just shut it off, and the signal is telling it what to do, you just shut it off and fly it by sight. It doesn't jam the video, which just jams the mechanism to make it work. So you just fly it by sight and fly it into whatever you want to fly it into. A big, huge Russian tank. This is one of the best armored vehicles in the world. Millions of dollars to build one. It takes a $2,500 drone to turn it into a firing inferno inside. All it does is drop that drone with some explosive in it right up its tailpipe. And that inside that tank turns into a firing inferno. And you can see the men, it's hilarious what's going on there because you can see the men once they realize the drones are getting through, they literally get out of the tank and go running. They'd rather hide somewhere and leave the tank. And the drone flies in the tank and destroys the tank. They don't care as long as they can get away from them. That's what's going on in Ukraine and Russia at the moment. But I'm getting off. Let's get back on this. Like we said, no peace. Lots of people, Pastor Minch, I said, think it's going to be Russia. I'm not really sure, but let's turn now to Ezekiel chapter 38, because I told you it's going to give us, not only is it going to give us a red that tells us where it is, but it's going to give us a physical point on the earth of what this is. And if we go to Ezekiel chapter 38, get down here and find it. There it is. And chapters, we can go to chapters 1, 2, and 3, but
It's verses.
verses, I'm sorry, yes, verses. And I got it right there, Ezekiel 38, 2, 3, 4, and 8. And I've got them listed separately because...
Ezekiel is that in the first?
Yeah, it's in the Old Testament. It's right with all the five, it's right where all the five prophets are, which is right after Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. Then you have Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, and Daniel. Ezekiel, halfway through the whole Bible. You'll find Ezekiel chapter 38. And the word of the Lord came unto me saying, now this is Ezekiel talking, Son of man, set thy face against God. Okay, now Son of man, if you see that S is capital. So he's not telling Ezekiel turn his face against God. Son of man. This is God letting you know that the Son of Man, and Son capital means the incarnate Christ. In the Old Testament, what do you call the incarnate Christ? Jehovah. Set thy face against God, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against them, and say, thus saith the Lord God. Behold, I am against thee, O God, and chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back, and put hooks in thy jaws, and will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sort of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, and all of them handling swords. Then it even lists some nations that are even still there today: Persia, Ethiopia, Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his bands, and the house of Tamar of the north quarters. Okay. Tomaga, north quarters, that means far north, and that's why they say Russia is the farthest north of Israel. And all his bands and many people with thee. Be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. In other words, these people are going to come, these armies are going to come in the end times to Israel. Okay? Gog and Magog tells it all that stuff. Russia, Mission, Tibble. That Meshach and Tubal and all those other ones are supposedly satellite nations of Russia, is what we believe that's what they say. Matthew 24:6. Let's get rid of this a minute. We'll come back to this Ezekiel, so keep it open. We're going to come back to it and read 4-8. Okay. But come on back to me to Revelations real quick. New Testament. Revelations. Oh, I'm sorry, Matthew, not Revelations. I want to come back to Matthew 24, because remember I told you that's the same thing as Revelation 6, the chapters. And 6 says, and hear ye of wars and rumors of wars, see that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdoms. Okay? Somehow, while they're going toward down there to destroy Israel, God's going to somehow, okay, this red horseman is going to make them fight each other. A war is going to break out. All these great nations, they've come to kill Israel. Something's going to happen. God himself is going to design a miracle. And while they're on the doorstep of Israel, in the mountains just north of Israel, in Lebanon, they don't even get there. They start fighting amongst themselves and destroy each other. So much so that people say that's God's divine intervention. Okay? In other places in Revelations, when we go through, we'll find out that when those armies fight and destroy themselves, Israel goes up and says if they could, okay, they would take all the wood and heat their homes for 7 years. Okay, the power of those whatchalls. Now I don't know what that talks about. I mean, of course, they didn't come in horses and wood and those land things, because that's not what we're using to make war anymore. But that's what people this time thought, and that's how they wrote it. But somehow they would, if they could, they would heat their homes for 7 years because of what they left behind. And kingdoms against kingdoms. As I said, lots of wars. I talked about our president has already killed those things. Like kingdom means kingdom. Stop there with the red horse. When we get to the pale horse, if we keep going, we'll get to the pale horse. Okay, we will come back and finish this verse. Matthew 7a, kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes. We're not even going to talk about that right now, because that's talking about the pale horse. And when we get the pale horse in our next lesson, we'll come back and look at this. Ezekiel, let's go back to Ezekiel 38. 39, 38. And 4-8. And I will turn thee back and put the I said that. And 7. Thou prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. After many days thou shalt be visited. In the latter years thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword, and is gathered out of many people, against the mountains of Israel, and which have been always waste. But it is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them. After this warning, they're all so afraid of everything, but it says that this country, this area that we're talking about, okay, is going to be a waste, okay, until the Jews come back. What's amazing about that is Mark Twain, Mark Twain that wrote Huck Finn and all that, the writer, he visited the Promised Land in 1867. Okay, he wanted to go see it. He money and camels and everything, and rode through the promised land, which is known as the promised land. Okay? In 1869, he wrote a travel log about where to go and where to see. And what he said about the promised land is, it is the most barren and desolate place I have ever seen. Okay. He said, I don't know who would want this place, this land. And God so graciously gave it to them. I looked at God and said, what the heck? Okay. It is the most desolate and barren place there is. That's what Mark Twain wrote about it. Okay. Well, the Jews went back in 1948. They went back a little sooner than that, but in 1948, they claimed it to Israel again, and we were the first country to recognize it. So since 1948, and it was desolate. It had been desolate for hundreds and hundreds of years since they got kicked out in AD 70. Okay? They finally went back. How is it today? Because the land that they got, New Jersey is one of our smallest states. It's only half of that, okay? And it's a whole country. All the countries around it are all 10 times bigger than Israel is. Israel's just a little teeny country. Okay. But what do they have? They, as far as culture and everything, what do we call that? Exports. They export farm equipment. They export farming, dairy, agriculture, dairy, fruit farms. They will export engineering, electronics, computers. Okay. They have a whole wonderful that they do. It's beautiful. Okay. They have the engineering. They irrigate it properly so that it grows and everything grows. And it is when you realize it, when you look up GDP, gross domestic product, okay, of a country, most people, at least all of Europe, just admires how America does its gross domestic product. How we can, for many years, our gross domestic product stayed for about 4 or 5. Theirs is barely making 1. Okay? And they used to ask the question, how does America do that? Well, America does that because, we do have big, huge conglomerates and Elon Musk with, what's the name of his company? Tesla. Yeah. And that kind of stuff. We do have them. We've had them out, Exxon oil and the railroads and the, what do you call it? Barons of business and all that. But, that's only about 25% of America's GDP. Do you know what really makes up 75% of our GDP? It's those little people, the little businesses. You, if you own a franchise of something and you're making money on a Burger King or something like that, or you have a shoe store or a live bookstore, or all those little businessmen really run the America's GDP. Okay? That's why our GDP went in the toilet when we had COVID, because they shut down all those little businesses. It almost destroyed our economy. But that's who runs our economy, the little businessmen, that they don't have in Europe a lot of. It's controlled by those that are in power. You don't have that like we have in America. Okay? That's what keeps us going, and that's what keeps Israel going. They follow the same capitalist market, and they do the same thing. Okay? Gotta set it up. I don't want to talk right now. The only difference there is they have a higher GDP than all the nations around them. And what's the gross product of the nations around them? Oil. Israel doesn't have any. Okay? And they still have a higher GDP than the Arab nations? Of course they do. Because the Arab nations are depending on just one. Israel's, what I was saying, when you go out, you sell it abroad, their exports, everything, all kinds of stuff. And the only reason we have peace in the Middle East today, that Donald Trump was able to bring peace in the Middle East today, is a lot of those countries now have looked at Israel all these years and they say, you know what? I want some of that. Why can't our nation have some of that? Okay? Why can't we trade with them and learn how they're engineering their farmlands and everything like that? It's the same land. Why can't we do that? And now they're also realizing that oil is not going to be there forever. And so Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, all of them within the Middle East, Iraq, all of them are saying, United Arab, UAE, United Arab Emirates. Okay, I was in that part when I was in the military, in that part of the world a lot, so I know a lot of those. What's Qatar, all of them that are down there, they're all saying, you know what, we want some of that. And the very easiest way to do it is first we have to start trading with Israel. And the other reason they didn't is Iran was the bully. If you traded with Israel, they had missiles and drones and things that could make your life hard. So they didn't. But now that Donald Trump, that's how he talked to him when he went to him and talked him into it. That's how we had the Abraham Accords, his first uh, term in office. And we're going to see it. It's going to happen. Iran, I was amazed that we went into Iran the way we did. Of course, we have a president that's willing to take risks and get things done that have to be done. They could not get a nuclear weapon. They could not. We find out now that they had missiles that could go much farther than anyone even had any idea they had missiles that could go that far. But they did. And if they could have put a nuclear warhead on it, they'd be another North Korea. You have to be careful because they got nukes. Iran will never have it now. And this will be peace within the Middle East. I laughed when I said how he gives a foreshadowing. Donald Trump comes on the scene and he brings peace to the Middle East. And that's what they're saying. How long will it last? I don't know. Because I know by the time the end times come, it isn't that way anymore. They're fighting again with everybody around them. And then God takes care of it. That's the end of it for this week. I'm sorry I kind of went off on all kinds of stuff, but next week we'll keep on going through Revelation chapter 6. And we'll get to the pale horseman. Bye now.